Hi all, welcome to the Riot Lunch and Learn series, the place where we spotlight Riot sponsors and partners. My name is Jen Morgan. I'm the Virginia program lead for Riot. Just a couple of quick reminders before we get started. This event is being recorded and will be uploaded to Riot's YouTube channel and uploaded to the meetup pages where you registered for this event. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, please place them in the chat. We ask that you please place questions in the chat so that they can be read aloud for those watching the presentation at a later time. All questions will be read aloud throughout the presentation. Finally, please keep yourself muted throughout the presentation to help mitigate background noise. Today, we have Bill Manning from JFrog presenting Secure IoT Development in an Unsafe World. Bill, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. I really appreciate the introduction. And hey, everybody, how you doing? I'm Bill Manning. Just so you have an idea who I am, I'm a solution engineering manager with JFrog. I will explain who JFrog is in case you don't know who we are. We're actually, I always joke around, we're the biggest little company you've never heard of sometimes. That's the way it feels. The thing is that, a little background about me, just so you understand, why they asked me to come and talk about this. So actually, I've been doing this before IoT was even the terminology. I had a company called ForHome. We sold it to Google and Motorola Mobility back in 2010. We actually launched one of the first home connected services with Verizon. That's a picture of me actually on CNN Money talking the future of connected devices, both industrial, home, and whatnot. There's a lot of things that we did during that time period that really influenced a lot of the way things like how Google handles devices and whatnot. So my background is I was doing this back in 2006 when we started. Before that, I had a couple of other acquisitions, CRM. We were the first web-based CRM in my company, Octane, a company called Postex. We sold that to Cisco back in end of 2005 before we started ForHome. Lots of things like that. I became a venture capitalist, focusing mostly on devices and the device-scape for a while. I'm an advisor to over 24 companies, mentor of a bunch of startups and things like that. With my background, I joined JFrog about 7 years ago, and I've been working on helping companies build better software. If you don't know who JFrog is, like I said, we're the biggest little company you've never heard of, or you do end-to-end software supply chain management. We have 97% retention rate for our customer base, we say 7,000 plus customers, approaching 7,500 global corporations that are using us right now. We're about 89% of the Fortune 100 actually utilize us, and we're just around helping everybody out. Like, it's amazing. I always joke around, we're from everything from Chick-fil-A to SpaceX, right? We handle the gambit. We also handle a lot of government customers, so like DoD, DHS, Federal Reserve Bank, you name it. Most of the companies out there you use software are there. In terms of connected devices and things like that, even down to automobiles. You ever see those BMW commercials where they're saying, we do over-the-air updates of our vehicles? That's JFrog. Things like Tesla, Rivian, you name it. We're providing that sort of software supply chain management for them and device updates. And the thing is we also have a lot of industrial, a lot of medical device companies, you name it, we handle it. But today, we're going to be talking about IoT by the numbers, right? Of course, but today we're going to be focusing on security. We all know the good numbers, right? We understand, 500 billion plus connected devices. We understand the billions of dollars in potential revenue that we can reach by 2030. The fact that it's a ever-growing industry, and it makes me happy because the vision that my company originally started with back in 2006 has taken some time, but a lot of this is now becoming to fruition. Actually, without this background on, my entire house is wired and things like that. But other than that, we have to talk about the other side of this too, the bad, right? IoT security, right? This is a huge thing. I mean, you think about, let's go back to even 2015. There was this massive DDoS attack that happened. It was from a series of connected devices that were, actually infiltrated and caused a huge ruckus. The thing is that cyber attacks are increasing all the time, especially with the sheer amount of volume of devices in homes, in industry and whatnot. And it's constantly growing, right? And the thing is that the amount of money people are spending on IT security around IoT devices is really pretty fathomable. But I'm not here to talk to you about the standard set of security that you guys are maybe used to, right? Which is usually is there protection around the device? And I'll show some of these other things too. But, not the standard set. What we're going to be talking about today is the software components that you actually run on the devices and the services that you actually offer to support those, right? So in most cases, you have, of course, a device that does something, and on the back end, you might have some sort of service that collects the data, controls it, whatever it is. I don't care, to be honest. The thing is, we have the gambit of different people. Like I mentioned Chick-fil-A before. Perfect example of one of the largest deployments I've ever seen of IoT devices, in the market. Every store they have, every location is a series of connected components, from thermal imaging sensors to hand device sensors that they can go ahead and manage and maintain and monitor the way people's hands are moving when they're assembling things, even down to weight sensors on things like the trash bins and monitoring the parking lot. But when we talk about this, we need to talk about the software development aspect of this, right? The software you create. Because one of the things is that 85 to 90% of all the software that you create, whether it's backend services or things that are on IoT devices, is actually open source components. Now, I got to preface this by saying I come from a software development background. I've been doing this for a long time, obviously with the gray hair and the white goatee. I've been doing this since the late 90s. And the thing is that developers are artisans, right? I always like to say that, their code is their craft. They make magic with their hands and the code and stuff that they create. The canvas is, of course, the empty IDE or the, command line interface that they're doing. The medium that they choose is the language they choose to do it, whether it's C++, Python, NPM for web interfaces, whatever. The thing is that now we have to also attend to things like Docker. When I was actually working on the original IoT space, we wrote a platform that bridged the gap between Zigbee, Z-Wave, LawnWorks, and IP and Bluetooth. The thing is that we were using OSGI as the open source gateway initiative as the stack for connected services. Now I see a lot of the companies I work with are using Docker in this respect, using a smaller Docker execution environment, using Docker containers to enable or disable services or enhance services that they offer to their, whether it's on the device or whether it's in the cloud. I love that term, the cloud, right? All these things. So we have a lot to contend with when we talk about this, and the susceptibility of these devices, a lot of that could come from the ideas of the open source compliance aspect. Because basically, every time that you do like a pip install, go get, Maven fetch is the equivalent of finding a thumb drive on the street and plugging it in your production server, or even uploading it to a device. I love this quote because it's so true. The thing is that you want to keep in mind is you want your developers to be able to develop and build, but also at the same time, you want them to have that naive approach, right? Because that's where the magic comes in. I need a library to do a job, such as, parsing a string or, creating a hash table or, holding the state of something. And I might find a library that does that. And the thing is that when we talk about this, the big thing you got to keep in mind is that, yes, 85% of, your software is someone else's you don't know. But the thing is that we are seeing massive amounts, over 72% of all attacks are happening due to these open source issues. And the thing is, it's constantly increasing over and over every year. It's a never-ending struggle. And we always feel like we're contending with this, right? How do we balance between innovation and remediation or addressing potential security issues? And the thing is that when we talk about these attacks and we talk about these susceptibilities that we have when we build and introduce in software, we have to keep things in mind that the software supply chain attacks are so prevalent. We don't even realize it. I mean, everybody knows like SolarWinds, right? SolarWinds was, in my opinion, was terrifying and also at the same time a huge wake-up call, because the thing is that it brought awareness to the industry more over than not that supply chain attacks are real and they are detrimental and they are hugely costly. I mean, SolarWinds was like $100 billion remediation globally. It affected things like the DoD. I mean, you think about this, right? And the thing is that supply chain attack, we see it all the time. We see these headlines, whether you're on Hacker News. I do spend a bunch of time there. I have to, because my job is to see where the industry is going in terms of susceptibility. On top of that, we see, all the time, all these things like corporate data leaks and, exploitable libraries. And, we're actually a CNA. So just so you're aware, as a company, JFrog is a CVE number authority. We actually have a huge research team that goes ahead and not only researches these components, but also supplies better security information back to the world. And I'm going to demonstrate these things, how you can build software today and make it more safe and relevant. And the other thing we have to contend with is malicious packages. Think about this. It's like we're being inundated in a world where we're just trying to do our job. We have KPIs to reach, we have products to deliver. And at the same time, in the back of our minds, we always have to keep in mind that there's a lot of bad actors out there. There's a lot of people out there that are either doing it for money, financial gain, or just recognition. And as we go through, we even find things that are even worse. One of the things I mentioned is like Docker, right? And one of the things that we've done is that as a security research team, we've gone out and scanned open source projects globally, right? We went to GitHub, we went to Docker Hub, and we started pulling in stuff. And we started looking for things like secrets. Think about this: API keys, access tokens, you name it. We're finding this stuff. And when we started scanning, we scanned millions of projects, right, with our tool set. And this is the kind of information we found. We found so many people, so many places out there where even things like secrets are being, released. I'll give you an example. I downloaded a Docker image, and the Docker image all I typed in was Docker, Python host. That's it. I ran it through our scanner, and I looked, and I found a whole bunch of information from the developer who supplied the Docker image I wanted to use for a service I was building. And when I went in, I found his API keys. I found all his AWS access tokens. I found tons of information. And the thing is that most of the time people check the usual places, right? They'll look for these. I contacted the guy because I was like, I'm really concerned. And he's like, well, where did you find this? I'm like, did you check the root history on the actual container? Never did. All that information was readily there. I could actually have exploited everything in this guy's environment at any time. But the thing is that these are kind of things you need to keep in mind. And like I said, it just becomes massive and inundating over time. And vulnerabilities cost companies tons of money every year, and it's not going down. It's actually increasing because the number of attacks are increasing. We had 21,000 new registered CVEs in 2022 alone. Think about that. 21,000 CVEs on top of the already 165,000 CVEs that are out there, right? If you're not familiar with that, that's a vulnerability and exposure, right? That means that there's a value set on a library that says that inside this library, it might be a single function, it might be an input value, you put something in and something terrible comes out. But the thing is that what a CVE says is there's something inside of this library, whether it's a direct transitive dependency that you've implicitly stated or an indirect transitive dependency that comes along for the ride. SolarWinds, by the way, was a 5th level transitive dependency, came completely under the radar during the actual building of the software. And the thing is that this number should terrify every single developer out there in the fact that it's always increasing. And the way attacks occur is that you're doing your job as a developer. You're putting some code together where, like I said, whether it's a service, whether it's something on a C and C++ on the device, you could be a data analytics person saying, here's all the devices we have in this industrial space. I need to get all the values from it to create some sort of graph to represent how maybe production's going. No matter what you're doing or what your services are, the thing is that you build software. And the software, you depend on dependencies, right? That 85 to 90%. And the thing is, you have implicit transitive dependencies that you state in your code. But of course, that could be susceptible. You build your code, you deliver it to your customer, you put it on your device, you do whatever you do with your software. Like I said, we have the gambit of everything you can imagine. But if one of these libraries is bad, well, yeah, that's going to influence your product. But most of the time, it's actually the implicit, right? The ones that come, the non-direct transitive dependencies that come along for the ride. Remember, dependencies have dependencies on dependencies of dependencies. It's just the way it is. And when you have those, it's the same idea. You're going ahead and you're pulling these in and you're suddenly making things susceptible. And you're not... it's not one of those things that most of the time, most people are completely aware of, right? There's tons of tools in the market that provide you with this. And I'll show you some examples of how we're addressing it today, where it matters most. And this is one of the key values that we bring as a company. Because there was a 650% increase in supply chain attacks in 2021. The big joke is that I make it about the pandemic because it's true. There was a lot of people sitting around, not able to go out, and some people got a little bored, some people got laid off, whatever, brilliant engineers. But the thing is that instead of going down in 2022, it went up. And in 2023, we're actually seeing a steady rise also. This is something that is not going away. And when we look at a supply chain of like when you develop software, one of the things I always ask people who come to me, or when I do talks publicly, or I talk to our customer base or potential customer base, I always bring up this kind of example, right? You have source code and you have binaries, right? The binaries are things you produce, the ones and zeros, but it's also the third-party things that you rely on. And you pull this stuff from public repositories, NPM. If you're doing C and C++, you can use Conan, right? If you guys have ever used Conan as a package manager, JFrog actually owns it, and we've open sourced it to the world, right? We thought C and C++ finally deserved a proper package management, so we created it and then we put it out there. And the thing is that Docker Hub, npm.js, I could go on and on, right? We support over 32 package types as a company, and the thing is you depend on this. Then you take it, you build your software locally. You might use a CI tool like Jenkins or Azure DevOps or something to build it. You take it, you pass it off to your QA team, right? That's software development lifecycle. And then you might take it and put it somewhere, in a staging environment. And when it's ready, you go to the distribution side, and then you can distribute it either to, a cloud service, such as, using Kubernetes, because we support Helm and Docker to support your devices. And then we have our JFrog Connect platform, or you can use our distribution service to distribute the software to do over-the-air updates of devices in the field. We see this a lot. Like I said, our OTA is one of the most exceptional you'll have out there, and Connect is actually, in my opinion, one of the simplest and easiest platforms to use in terms of IoT management, whether it's device management, remote updating, device monitoring, diagnostics. We're actually seeing a huge uptake in companies adopting our methodology. But the thing is that when you look at the software development lifecycle that we have here, you need to keep in mind all the places you're susceptible. And that's the thing, is that not, these packages that you use to develop your software, the other problem is that they're constantly being updated, right? They're constantly evolving. And the other problem with open source is that I'm a huge contributor to the open source community. We're actually, as a company, we are also. And the thing is that how do you keep up with all the number of versions? How do you make sure that the versions that are being created aren't something nefarious or malicious that could cause you detrimental harm to your organization? Now, I'm not just talking financial. I'm talking reputational also. Reputational is just as damning as financial. Financial you can recover from, right? You might have upturns or downturns. Reputation is a different story. If you release a device that suddenly, you have, say, cameras in your home, like my home has cameras everywhere outside just to keep monitoring. I also like to experiment with stuff so my whole home is connected. But what if suddenly there's new updates to that camera, and instead of broadcasting to the secure, say, monitoring service that I'm utilizing, suddenly it's broadcasting all of my cameras out to the internet, unbeknownst to me, because I introduced a new package that might be susceptible? Well, that's a shame on me. That's me not doing my diligence. But the thing is that in some cases, how do I keep track of that? And also, too, if I'm doing something implicitly, how do I ensure that those those indirect transitive dependencies, the ones that come along for the ride, if you guys have ever used NPM, I always use NPM as the example. I call it the house party, right? I put, say like 3 or 5 things in my package.json that I need to use to actually build my software, and 500 libraries show up, right? Out of nowhere. Well, that's part of the model, right? And this is some of the things that we're trying to protect companies against. I love when I talk to companies, I always say, I'm like, hey, by the way, the only reason why I'm telling this is I'm one of your customers, and I want to make sure my software is safe, right? I want to make sure my devices are safe. I want to make sure the services that I'm entrusting you with my data are safe. And understanding that, you need to think about things like, are these packages malicious? These are things that developers now have to be cognitive about. But if they don't have the right tool sets, if they don't have the right information, it's really hard. License compliance. This is huge, especially if you're in the medical space and your medical IoT or your industrial IoT, where people could, I don't know, get killed, or these are things that we have certain license requirements that we help our customers attribute to, right? They go ahead and they say, here's the licenses that we accept, and here's the ones we don't. So some of these third-party transitive dependencies might have either licenses that are detrimental, or they might have fake licenses that actually indicate that they might be malicious libraries themselves, with things like typo squatting, where you accidentally mistype in a label for a library and you get the library you thought you had, but you wind up downloading some malicious version. Binary spoofing, that's another one. These are also sometimes key indicators by license type. Are they vulnerable? Are these libraries, have some susceptible method? And also, too, if the susceptible method is not being used, do you discard it, right? This is something we're going to address today is, how do you determine whether a library's vulnerability, a CVE? If you're not familiar with CVE, please look it up, or CVSS score. The idea is that how do you ensure that they're not vulnerable? Well, that would take time and effort, and a lot of things is also, too, some of these libraries, you might not be being affected because you may not be using the potentially nefarious component. And then lastly, I'll tell you, 74% of the libraries that you use indirectly or directly are old, outdated, or abandoned. Think about this. If you're working with something, suddenly you have some code, you find a bug, you find out the bug that you found is somewhere embedded deep in the path of libraries that you use to do your job. And it was developed in 2009, and that version has never been updated. There's a real good possibility that you are not going to get a fix for this, and you are going to have to find an alternative solution to do the development on what you do. So saying that, when we look at this, we have to tell people all the time that, yeah, your entire software supply chain from end to end is susceptible to basically disrupting your organization in terms of what it can do, right? Whether it's the devices, the services those devices depend on, or the services that your customers depend on, right? Every aspect of what you do, and I'm not trying to put the fear in you, but I'm putting the fear in you. The idea is that every time you do a keystroke, every time that you bring in a new library, you're increasing your risk of potential vulnerabilities and threats to you, your organization, and your customer, and your bottom line and your reputation. These are the things that we do as a company to make sure that it's safe and secure. But I'm also telling you generally, even without JFrog, that responsibility of a coder is to ensure the safety and security of the output of the end user and the end user of those services, right? This is your responsibility. And the thing is like, we came about the approach. We've been around since 2008, just so you know. So like I said, we're heavily ingrained in this. We went public a couple of years ago as a company. But when you're a developer, you're pulling directly from public sources. And in most cases, you shouldn't have to worry about what you're doing, but you should. I have the numbers, right? I showed you the numbers that prove it. So we're providing a way for companies to go in and curate the things that they're doing, the things that they're using, and making sure that we provide our customers with the tool sets that matter, ID plugins, so they can identify any potential services. Like I'll show you right now. If I'm a developer, your best defense is, actually, I'll wait to show you that. If you're a developer, your best defense is the developer. It's called shift left. You hear it all the time, right? There's shift left and shift right. I love these terminologies that come out. But the idea is that if you want to fix something and you find a vulnerability, it's 100 times more expensive to fix it once it's gone into production than it is if you address it where it matters most, which is your developer. And also want to make sure that when you're bringing in these libraries, that you have a way to pre-vet them. This is what we do. We actually go ahead and allow you to pre-vet the libraries that you're using before they even get in the developer's hand, before they cause an issue. But of course, when you create these things too, we integrate it to the CI. It's a constant process. It should not be a one-point solution where you go ahead and you do some sort of evaluation of that library. Because the thing is that look at Log4j. Log4j, by the way, biggest disruptor out there when that vulnerability came out. And hey guys, just so you're aware, they were actually sending out info and warnings for 2.5 months before the actual CVE became a CVE and the whole world went on fire with Log4j and Log4Shell, right? The thing is that nobody pays attention to this stuff, just so you're aware. I mean, one of the things I'm going to share with you guys as a takeaway for this is if you ever want to read some really good, interesting articles on development, we have a public research page we put out there to inform companies and inform just the public in general that there's bad stuff. And these are things that we're investigating, because the sooner you know, the more preemptively you can attack something before it costs revenue and whatnot. But the thing is that when Log4j happened, the whole world went on fire, right? Everybody was like, oh my God, it was used everywhere. Now remember, anytime a vulnerability is found, always pay attention occasionally. Go look at the stuff you're looking at. Look at info and warnings. Info and warnings are a good way in this world to make sure that if something is coming, that you can address it, because every CVE is handled like the scientific method. It's found, it's tested, right? It's tested again, it's peer reviewed again, right? It goes through a process and then it's produced, and then the warning, the info goes out and says this is a critical issue, it's a medium issue, right? And that you need to address these. One of the things I'm going to talk about today is also how to delineate through them and do this. But for us, we look at the software supply chain as a continuous thing. This is not a segmented thing. Your entire software supply chain goes from that developer all the way to its final destination, whether it's a device or it's a service that's out there, right? You need to be able to address this, and the thing is with our products that we do is, like I said, I'm not trying to be sales pitchy, but I am part of JFrog and I have to do these little talky bits, is the fact that we are helping customers with this. And this is a systemic problem in the industry, and it's not going away, but we're trying to do our best to make it better, right, for everybody. But I'm going to show you today on how you can fix and how you can address these. And the thing is that we'll talk about things like shift left, right? We have extensions for like Docker desktop because of Docker desktop, services that are out there. You can use our CLI to do scanning. We have a thing called Frogbot, which is a way to do, if you do pull requests, you can go ahead and do vulnerability assessments on pull requests. I'm going to show you the IDE on like the importance of it and why this matters, right? I mean, I have a very simple project that I built for actually I have a home kit. I use Homebridge at home, so I can use all my Amazon and Google devices with my iPhone and my Apple Watch, right? So I have that, and I'm building a new service that's going to bridge that even more, to include things like some better webcams and whatnot. But the thing is that as I'm going through this, I'm actually using my own tool sets to evaluate the stuff that I'm building, and it's the best way for me to learn. And also too, I'm putting this in my home. Like I said, I'm going to be connected to a new camera service that I built. And the thing is that I want to make sure that I'm not exposing myself or my family or my neighbors to potential threats, right? I mean, can be insane. So saying that, we have our entire platform that we offer. We have it on our website. You can go check it out. One of the new services we just offered to our customers is called Curation. We're actually now providing a service for corporations to have trusted binaries, like libraries that they can use for like NPM and Python and whatnot, that are secure, they're signed, they're registered. It's a nice way to cut down on that friction. But the thing is we're trying to provide this level of solution, and the protection is the important part. Now, outside of our products, the thing is that with Curation, we're providing a way for customers to take a little bit of a breather by knowing that the sources that they're pulling from are more trusted. But the thing is that when we talk about security, there's things you got to keep in mind. First of all, licensing. Secondly, operational risk. And what operational risk is and I'll just show you from our aspect what that means. And operational risk from our perspective is something that every company should keep in mind when they talk about this kind of stuff internally. Like I said, even outside of JFrog, okay, is, are the libraries I'm using end of life? How old are the libraries I'm using? Is there new versions available and stuff that might fix issues I potentially have? And also, is the open source project that I'm utilizing for these libraries to do my work, are they abandoned? Are they being maintained? These are important questions that every software company should ask. But also too, are there malicious packages in the things that I'm creating? What kind of vulnerabilities am I making my organization susceptible to? And then going one step further, we've gone and we're trying to help companies do this more effectively, because I'll tell you right now, the amount of time that it takes for companies to do their operational work, to do this kind of level of remediation, is insane. And I'm going to demonstrate some things that we're doing to combat this. Like I said, I always talk to customers that I happen to be their customer. I want my stuff safe. I want to be able to know that if I'm using something, that I'm not going to be susceptible and be one of those people that I've got to go now and start making phone calls and make sure that my identity is protected, right? Or making sure that there's information about my home that's not going to be leaked to somebody, or my car, or whatever. And so we're bringing in things like contextual analysis. Are these vulnerabilities contextually relevant to the way I'm using those libraries? Like I said, if you have a library with 100 functions and there's one bad function that causes an issue to be critical, and you're not using that function in your code, do you replace that library? This is an intrinsic question that everybody should ask, right? And the answer should be no, right? If you're not using that level of function, then it shouldn't affect you. Or if that library that might be, malicious, if it has an input value and that input value causes the library to do something and you're not using that input value, do you get rid of it? I talked about secret detection, right? With the Python container where I found it, right? Where I was like, you know what? Hey, I could have taken all this information from you and taken over, all your bases belong to us kind of mentality, but I didn't, right? I happened to be ethical and decided to contact the individual. He thought I was crazy at first until I shared with him all the information. But also, too, as part of this, are you using the application libraries correctly? Right? Application misuse. What if you're not doing a proper try catch, or you're not, maybe you're using a static value when you should be using a variable value, right? Things like that. Are your services configured correctly? Are you enforcing TLS? Are you going ahead and doing things like cores, right? The old cores thing, right? Cross-site stuff. Are there potential input values? Like with static code analysis, just so you know, we don't currently do it right now. We'll be doing it very soon with our product. I can't talk about it just yet, but we are bringing static code analysis. We do software composition analysis right now, and we'll be bringing static code because that's part of the misconfiguration. What if you're hosting a service, you put Nginx on, you have on the device, you have a service you deployed, you're using Nginx as your way for, say, a visual interface or an API interface to that device, and you're not enforcing things like SSL, or you're not doing validation checking, right? These are things you need to keep in mind. And then on top of that, we do things around infrastructure as code, right? So in other words, if you're deploying a web service to support your devices, one of the other areas you need to be careful of is, I'm a huge fan of infrastructure as code. I mean, I come from the days, I'm sure there's some people on here that are maybe around my age too, of the days where, if you needed to increase capacity for your service, you had to go out and literally buy physical servers and stand them up and make sure they were configured properly and add them into your mix. And then of course, Docker came along and others, and VMware, and then Kubernetes. And I mean, just to let you know, by the way, when it comes to Kubernetes, very near and dear to my heart. It's very near and dear to JFrog. We are governance board members of the Cloud Native Foundation. And for better or for worse, anytime you do a Helm update, you can thank one of our employees named Remus. Remus is actually the guy who co-created Helm, right? So we're very involved in this. And things like Terraform and Ansible and Chef and Puppet, these are amazing. And I know so many companies that are using these strategies to do device updates, even in large scale environments. I have an IoT company, industrial IoT, that I'm working with right now, and that company is using Terraform as a way to update over 27,000 devices in the manufacturing facility. That's insane, right? But the thing is that can be susceptible too, right? You're not enforcing certain rules, ACLs, right? Access controls, things like that. These are kind of things you need to keep in mind when you're developing. It's amazing, software development is, in IoT, sometimes it gets overlooked in terms of susceptibility. We see this a lot when I do talks, and I'm here to say, yes, as a developer, there are ways to protect yourself, your company, and your customers from potential threats. So understanding that, we also brought to the table, I'll show you an example. We have this thing called JFrog Connect. It's a natural extension. It's a device management system, remote updater. It's a way to monitor, and the security aspect of it is phenomenal too, because we can look at breaches. We can also monitor services. Maybe you built a service, you put it on there. A library you use suddenly goes out of control. You can say, oh my God, what's the service running on this device that's eating my resources? This is a way for you to maintain, monitor, and look at it. Now, the thing is, when we talk about Connect and the way we do things, it's like I said, it's a low-cost system. Actually, what's nice is I'll show you at the end. I've got a surprise for you guys that you can utilize if you want. We're going to offer a couple things to you as a members of this group. And I just got to say before we keep going, I got to thank everybody for being here. I'm very honored to be here. But the thing is I want to talk about now is I want to show you some examples of things that to keep in mind, right? And what I'm going to do is I want to show you just how bad it can be and the kind of stuff that we're exposing as a company, right? It's always best for us. I mean, yes, I know this isn't really I'm not doing a product demo per se. It just happens to be the product, but these are things that we notice and things that companies should keep in mind, even outside of us, because like I said, you might be doing things that, in my opinion, might be affecting me because of a company you work for and something that I do. So I have a two-sided coin on this one, right? I'm definitely playing both sides. So let's go just take a look at something. So first of all, our platform is all consolidated into a single interface, even though every service that we offer is separate, independent, and can be scalable. But I'm going to show you an example of some scary stuff and some things that we're doing to help make things better. I actually have a service that I built. Now, the service I built is actually running on a device. I have, well, you can't see my desk, but under my desk, I have a series of Raspberry Pis. Unfortunately, my wife hates it because whenever she looks under my desk, she always thinks something's going crazy and there's lights everywhere and blinky blinks. Anyway, I have a service that I'm building. I'm using it down below. And the service I'm using is actually in this container right here, right? This application that I'm using. And the application that I'm using, it's an internalized service. And I always ask people the same question, right? You want to make sure that the libraries that you're utilizing. Now, I always like to show Docker, just so you guys are aware. The reason why I like to show Docker is sheer complexity and the things that are inside of it, right? You have the OS, you have the runtime, you have the application layer. Like I said, my Raspberry Pi that I have here, I actually have it running 3 containers, and these 3 containers are running in unison to go ahead and extract data from, I have a launch system that I have, and I'm monitoring my water usage, right? Because the devices that I use out here happen to show me how much water each one of the spigots is consuming, and I can control them on an individual basis. And so I want to make sure, because I'm in California, water is all, right now water is plentiful, but last year it was not. I want to make sure that it's, that I'm not utilizing more than I do. Well, one of the problems is that when I constructed this container, I have 309 vulnerabilities. Think about this. 309 vulnerabilities. I release a new version of this image at least probably, in my opinion, because it's a home project, maybe twice a week. But in most cases, companies are releasing multiple versions of these all the time. Now, the problem is I have 309 vulnerabilities. I ask this question to every customer or every person I talk to and say, how long would it take you to investigate whether or not you are susceptible? Is that one function available, that you're using that could be nefarious or malicious? Are you using it? Well, it's going to take time and effort. And how do you swim upstream, right? The stream is constantly coming, new builds all the time, and new vulnerabilities are constantly coming. So one of the things that we're doing is we're helping is that out of these 309 vulnerabilities, I could tell you that 74% of these is not applicable. 74% of these libraries are not applicable to the actual issue at hand. And if I select any of these, like here's a 9.8 CVE. This is bad. Like these are bad components. Like these are things that you have nightmares about if you're a security person. And the thing is that I can click in here and get the information I need, right? So I can look at the public source information that tells me some things. We're actually telling companies, we're like, hey, you know what? We actually investigated this for you with our scanners just to let you know that you're not being affected by this. I can get rid of 74% of these, right? And we still include our research data on what that means and, why is this an issue? This is something we see all the time. But that's the thing, you should focus on the ones that are applicable, the ones that can be detrimental to your corporate health. And that's where this happens, right? So I can click in here and we also expose and say, hey, by the way, yeah, you are being affected by this issue and you should go fix it here. So we've also gone ahead and removed a bunch more. We provided instant action. The thing is, as a service, you need to go ahead and address these issues, whether it's in the device, or whether it's actually in the cloud services that you're offering. And also, too, we have malicious packages. I mean, my favorite one I did here is this one's not so bad. This one here, I actually using I was using, one of the libraries that actually is here. It's actually using bad passwords. These are passwords that are readily available. And by the way, this service, I tested it. I actually use these passwords to go in and override my functions on my device. I actually was able to dig in. And if I'm a really specialized skilled hacker and I'm scanning the world and I happen to find a device, these are the things I'm going to test. Do I have any services? Yeah, you know what? I screwed up on this one. I forgot to on my Nginx to force TLS. I have a wide open HTTP service that I can't do anything about unless I enforce TLS to make sure that I have a sure encrypted connection, because the service data that I have in this case can be easily listened upon. These are some of the things you need to be aware of. These are issues we see all the time with our customer base. It's incredible. But the thing is that I mentioned where it matters most, right? Where these things are a priority. And by the way, one of the other things you need to keep in mind, and actually I'm doing a talk tomorrow night as a thing, I'm doing a talk on things like software bill of materials. If you're doing medical or industrial or working with the government in any respect, software bill of materials is something you need to keep in mind. And we've made it easier for our customers. You can actually export this as an SPDX or a cycle NDX format, right? For your legal team or any of your customers that request to have a software bill of materials. This is a huge problem right now that we've been addressing for a couple of years. We've actually been doing this for a long time when it comes to this, but it became a thing in 2021 in response to the SolarWinds attack, right? That affected the government that said, if you work with us, you need to actually provide us with a software bill of materials no matter what you're doing. And now this has bled over to the private sector, especially in the medical device field, industrial field, and automotive and avionics, right? This is where we see the most uptake, but that's a whole talk for another time. But we also make sure that your developers should be aware. Oh, I heard somebody. Oh, your developers should be aware of what they're using. So here's an example of my service, right? If you see any of my crappy code, please ignore it. I'm sure there's some rough stuff in here, but these are the libraries I'm using, right? And we provide the ability for a developer to know, hey, by the way, just so you know, you're bringing something susceptible into this. And we've actually gone one step further, right? Because knowledge is power, right? Understanding that if I have to go and investigate these, this is going to take me time. Once again, I'm swimming upstream, right? The volume is increasing, whether it's the CVEs or the number of releases. We're actually going ahead and we're providing information to the developer to say, hey, by the way, here's how you're susceptible, and here's how you can go ahead and fix it. And we're also helping expose things like, here's an example in my auth.json when I built this, right? In my auth.json, I'm actually using verify, and verify I'm not using correctly at all. I'm not. I was an idiot. I'll admit it. I was an idiot in this case, and I didn't do it correctly. It's medium, but the thing is that I really should go in and fix it. And here I can go ahead without having to leave my confines of my IDE, right? I don't have to leave the IDE. I can address it where it matters. We're even doing things like, once again, here's my hard-coded security key that I was using for my testing, right? And then eventually I'll move this off into, some sort of vault, and I'll pull it in and utilize it, based on some exchanges and whatnot to make it better. But in this case, yeah, you know what? Whoops. I'm actually, as part of my configuration, I'm exposing this. And if I'm somebody who's savvy enough to go in ahead and exploit this, I will. And the thing is that bringing that same level of protection, even down to things like the Docker desktop. I mean, if you're using Docker desktop for all your containers, we're providing the same level of detailed service to our customers to make sure they address what needs to be addressed when it needs to be addressed, which is now. And the thing is that, as I mentioned, I am going to go back and just show you is that, when we do software development, it's not just, one of the things I always teach, but I teach a lot of best practices to companies, like how do you do things better? And it's not just understanding, is there an issue, right? Because there are issues, but also too, where is it in my release cycle? Also too, I mean, I use this example all the time. This is a Docker container, right? One of the biggest problems that we face all the time with customers is they go, I released something and I don't know what I've released, right? I kind of do, but I released a web service, I put it on a device or whatever. All I know is this is Dr. 157. And we're actually helping with best practice to say, what, we can expose for you what applications you're hosting. So rapidly, if 157 degrades service, well, I can tell you this is the version that was launched, right? This is my front end for my API, and this is my backend service that, remember I told you I have one that's aggregating all the information out here. Well, this is a service that aggregates all that data, and this actually displays the data for me, right? This is what I do. But I can also go ahead and even do things like I can diff between them to make sure that, if this one, what changed at my application layer. Also, too, with these vulnerabilities, one of the biggest complaints that we get from customers is root cause analysis. I don't know if any of you guys have ever had to deal with the root cause analysis report when something goes terribly wrong, but accumulating that data can take days and weeks, right? I had a guy last year, he's like, I go, what's your biggest problem you're running into? He's like, stupid root cause analysis reports. He goes, it eats up my time for days and weeks so I can figure out where everything's been affected. So we're actually helping companies with that too. Like, here's the build that created this front end that might be susceptible. Well, you know what? Here's every place I've ever used it, right? I know immediately that, oh crap, I've actually exposed my customers. I'm having my own customer in this case, but I exposed my customers to potential threats through all these past previous releases. And then my ability to even say, what if there's a library that I've been using this whole time? Right? I've been using a library for something. And you know what? This library is terrible. I'm just going to select a random one here. I'm going to click on it. I'm going to show you this library. And the thing is that I can show you that if this one was bad, here's 122 places that I've actually referenced this library. These are 122 potentially threatening exploitation points. I can't even talk today. I'm still consuming my coffee. So, I'm still getting there. But these are the kind of things you need to be aware of. How are you using libraries? Where are you using libraries? Are they safe? Do you have the proper ways to go in and ensure their security? And then I'll take questions in a few minutes. But then the other side of it is we're providing a way for our customers also to go ahead and deploy, things to all the devices that they have, right? So, the thing is that in my case, you have the ability to go ahead and do things like register devices and connect to them. Let's see here. I think I'm actually in the wrong location because I actually have devices here usually. But it looks like my devices are missing. I think I logged into the wrong account. But the thing is that we have the ability to do things like remote control devices. One of the things that we provide to our customers is also the ability to create work updates and flows extremely rapidly. Do you want to reboot the device? Do you want to deploy a container? Do you want to deploy new libraries into it? Do you want to check the status of something? Right? These are the kind of things that you can go ahead and utilize our service for. Now, I know I'm going to get off this whole product kick, and if you want to do, I actually have an IoT workshop that I do online. But I want to let you guys know that one of the other things too is if you go ahead, you can scan our this QR code, sign up for our free trial for our IoT service and a bunch of the other things that we do. This is a way for you to kind of go in and play around with the way we're handling device updates and security and whatnot. And also, too, next month, I'll be one of the speakers at this, too. I'm doing a whole talk on software bill of materials. I will be also talking about devices as part of this and the importance of liability. And yes, I get to do the fun, legally garbage aspects of software development, right? I get to go in and say, hey, by the way, here's all the things you're using and how you can supply that to your customer base so they can evaluate the components that you're using to make sure it doesn't violate their policies. But we're giving a 50% discount on our our event. It's happening in San Jose here downtown. If you do come, please come by and say hi. I will be there giving a talk, and we'll also be demonstrating devices and a lot of update things that we're doing with some of our partners that will be there. It's gonna be pretty exciting, actually. If there's anybody has any questions or anything, please let me know.
Wow, that was fantastic. Thank you so much. We'll now take questions from the audience. If you have any questions, please place them in the chat box now, and I will read them aloud.
I need one of those mugs that, like heats up to keep warm, because I just took a sip of that and it was probably a terrible idea.
I feel that.
Anyone? Bueller?
I mean, you covered it so well. I don't know.
I hope this is, like I said, these are things that I want people to be aware of, right? A lot of people talk about devices and all these things, and like I said, I've been doing this for 17 years. God. Oh, there we go. Yes, I know. I want one of those. I want one of those Ember mugs so bad, but it's like, oh yeah, industrial edge computing is supposed to be protected. Yeah, I think you used the word supposed. Right? That's remember, even if a service that you're utilizing, like some of these edge computing services, I'm not going to name names, there are some out there. Remember, even if they provide you with the system and the ability to do it, it's still your responsibility on the software you host in those, right? So the thing is that, even if it's protected and your software isn't, they nullify. Right? The thing is that you can have the most protected service in the world, but if you're not doing your part to ensure, that your stuff is not susceptible, you're susceptible. It's one of the biggest problems I see a lot with the customers is like when they start going through and looking at stuff, they're like, yeah, well, I'm using this protected blah 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 blah, and then they do a scan evaluation of their code, and next thing you know, they're using I ran it. Here I go. I'll give you an example. I ran a container I was going to use for testing. And when I did it, I decided to put a network sniffer on, right? Everything would look cool. I was like, this is great. This is exactly what I need. When I put the network sniffer on, it gave a ping to somewhere in China, and a response came back that says, basically, give me your log files, all of them. And I was like, oh, somebody wants all my activity logs on everything I'm doing inside this container, and it was going to package it up into a zip and shove it off somewhere into the verse somewhere. I was like, that could be very dangerous. Now, picture if I'm doing this and I'm monitoring health devices, EKG machine that's connected, right? Doing heart rate in a hospital. And what if I'm using losing a library that is potentially threatening, where I could remote instance into it and stop it, which might be connected to a ventilator? These are things that are real. Can you address production data, batch records? So the thing is that that are analyzed by data analytics, AI, and all kinds of other software. Oh God, yeah. Now we're talking CRM. Like I said, my career started in the CRM space. We actually had the first web-based CRM product ever developed in the market when we sold it back in 2000 to a company called Epiphany. And this dates back to the late 90s, right? When it comes down to data analytics, not AI at the time. I had an AI company actually before I joined JFrog. We were doing NLPs and all this kind of stuff and Bayesian models, and it was fun for a while, but nobody saw the value in it back in 2014. Now it's a thing. But the thing is that when it comes to like data analytics, or like you said, AI interfering with those kind of things, that's different scope than what we're kind of addressing here. But yes, so here's the thing, is AI models and modeling, right? I mean, it's not magic, right? It's basically shove as much data as you can into an engine, and then hope you get a model out of it. If you got crappy algorithms, you're gonna get crappy results, right? I'm sorry, but that's not every AI service is good, Like, I've tested a whole bunch because of my background, and they're terrible. It says here, my primary needs are QS soda and data analytics, OPH drives. Okay, so CMNs integrated, upgraded, and changed, and have seamless systems. Yeah, so here's the thing is that I have somebody I'm working with right now. We have an API, we have a series of webhooks and stuff. And what they're utilizing us for is they're taking the AI components of the things that they're doing and analyzing the usage data of the way they're doing things. And what they're doing is it's actually their services or adaptive services. So the adaptive services take that modeling and create new versions of the software based on that modeling and deploy it. Right. So this is like something they're working on. They're utilizing us as a way to do those system updates based on data values. And also to we'll be also discussing this at Swamp Up. I can't really talk too much about it. But we'll be, I might as well say, screw it. We're going to be just introducing some ML ops stuff too. Very soon. It's about a month away, less than a month away. And ML ops is going to become a thing, and that's going to be something in the IoT space that is, I think, finally going to be the beginnings of a prime time as opposed to fringe technology, right? ML ops has been around for a while, but I think it's not there yet. That's just my opinion. I think it's still pretty infancy, but the ML ops stuff will take care of some of the stuff that you're looking at, you put here.
Any additional questions? While we're waiting on final questions, Bill, can you tell us how the best way to get in touch with you is?
Absolutely. If you want, you can find me. My name is William Manning is my real name. So I'm William Manning. I'm one of those early adopter technology guys. So like my Twitter handle, X handle is William Manning. Same thing on LinkedIn if you'd like to. If you actually go ahead, by the way, some of the other resources that we have, if you're interested on some of the things that we're doing. Let me see here. Here's a study that Forrester just did on our platform. But also too, it's basically delivery. We've increased delivery. We also have our JFrog Academy. Here's a place for it too. And then if you want, actually, there's somebody on this call too. That's actually I am a part-time person for this stuff, but we have the honor of having actually Melissa McKay here. Her and I are doing some talking tomorrow night. She is one of the most exquisite DevRel people I've ever met in my life. And the thing is, here's our YouTube page, and we actually have a lot of stuff on here. Actually, one of the ones I'll just show you, one of the videos I have, and I'll share it. I did a big, wow, I have way too many videos here. Where I did one on, where is it? Here, IoT management. So this is actually a larger talk I did strictly on best practices around device updates and management. And actually, there's another one I think I did a talk with you guys last year on this kind of stuff too. And that's Melissa right there. Here's a picture of her right there.
Well, thank you so much for a wonderful presentation. As a reminder, everyone, Riot does host these weekly Lunch and Learn series Wednesdays at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. You can find a list of our Lunch and Learns on our meetup pages where you registered for this event. This event was recorded and will be posted to Riot's YouTube channel and the meetup page where you registered. Thank you all so much for joining. Thank you, Bill, for a wonderful presentation, and I hope everyone has a great rest of your day. Bye all.
Thanks, guys. Be safe, be wonderfully well.